Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. I hope everybody's having a beautiful day. I hope the sun is shining. I hope the birds are singing. I hope the wind is at your back. I have a beautiful show for you today, and I'm excited to introduce a friend of mine, a guest, an incredible teacher, and a wonderful woman. She is Reverend Dr. Jessica Rochester. She's the Mahadrina and president of the Sud de Montreal, a Santo Daime Ayahuasca church she founded in 1997 in Montreal, Canada. She's a transpersonal counselor. She trained in the work of Dr. Roberto Assagioli and trained with Dr. Stanislav Grof. She worked with Health Canada from 2000 until 2017 to achieve a Section 56 exemption to import and serve the Santo DaimeSacrament. She's an ordained interfaith minister with a doctorate in divinity. From 1986 to 2018, she has been a workshop leader, a teacher, and private practice. She's the author of two amazing books, Ayahuasca Awakening, A Guide to Self-Discovery, Self-Mastery, and Self-Care, Volumes 1 and 2. She continues to lecture on consciousness, non-ordinary states of consciousness, self-discovery, spiritual development, health and well-being, and personal transformation. And I am delighted to have you here, Dr. Jessica. How are you?
Well, thank you for asking. I am really well on so many levels, and don't ask about a few other levels. But I think that's the balance we have to come to in life, is where we can live with gratitude for everything that's good and not let the difficult or challenging things to like Ramdas says, be here now, and be in the stream of our consciousness, and at the same time recognize the challenges in our life. And today it's going to be kind of fun because we're going to be talking, but it's tricky what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes.
And I apologize to everybody. I've had to use my voice a lot the last while. And so it may fade out from time to time. And so everybody hang in with me, and we'll get there in the end. I just want to thank you. It's always a pleasure, George, to hang out with you. And, you're different from other hosts in that you don't have your set specific questions that you're going to ask, or the ones that you particularly developed to try and trap me. Okay. Those are always so interesting. Those kinds of interviews, they're usually more like an interview done around specific topics by specific types of media, where their joy is trying to catch you out. So I just want to really acknowledge you that you're the type of host who really wants to find the gold in the conversation. And speak to the expertise or the skills or the knowledge that your guest has, rather than just run your own agenda. I've been on podcasts where, the podcast is going to be like maybe 40 minutes or 45 minutes. And the first 20 or so is the host talking about themselves. And it's like, are you sure you want to be here today? You could just do a monologue. Right. So, anyway, enough of all that. What we're talking about today is something that I think that touches every single one of us on both sides of it, having some of it and experiencing it in our everyday life. And so I first want to say that I want to have to, chapeau to Dr. Monica Williams, a wonderful woman and a colleague. She's the research chair, psychology in Canada. She's at University of Ottawa. And we've worked together on research paper and that we did, and other projects. And it was a comment of hers, and one of her LinkedIn comments that I commented on. And I asked her the question because she was talking about microaggression and how we all need to be aware of when we're doing that, and why we're doing it. Okay. And she's doing some very thoughtful research and presentations on that topic. And so I wrote back to her and I said, what do you think the root is in the comments? What do you think the root is? I see it as self-importance and otherness, And a couple of people said, could you say more about self-importance and otherness? And then I said, yes, I will. I'll probably write a post on it or something. And then poof, got too busy with other things. So I'm delighted today to talk about, or try and talk about, try and open the conversation around self-importance and otherness. And let's start with self-importance. Okay, something we all have to really try on, like, Cinderella, and see if the shoe fits. Self-importance is defined as, and here's where I want my PowerPoint presentation. I never even asked you if I'd be allowed to do that, because I'm really, my lecturing, I've got the fancy PowerPoint with all the gorgeous images and everything. But then that's mostly when I'm working with in conferences with students, so they actually may have to write a paper on it. What is it? Okay, what is self-importance? Can we define it as an inflated sense of personal value or importance? So an inflated or exaggerated sense of personal value or personal importance. Is that a fair enough launching pad to go from? Okay. Now, what happens when we have this inflated sense of personal value or importance? It will lead to arrogance and an attitude underlying with a belief on being superior somehow to others. So the consequences of this exaggerated, inflated sense of personal value can be a belief system that develops that some way, because of something, okay, that we are somehow more important, more valuable, or superior to others who are not us or like us in some way. Is that fitting so far as definitions? Yes?
Yeah, I think they're well.
Okay. Where do we get this entitlement, this self-importance from? Where does it come from? Okay, so let's tick off where we can find it. First of all, culture and society. All we have to do is look around the world. If we don't want to look too closely at home, we can see, look at the caste system. The caste system where you have the Brahmins, who are the most important, the most enlightened, the most what have you, and you have the Dalits, or the untouchables. This is a system that has existed for about thousands of years. And that's just one that is clearly defined and named. Okay? We have this Brahman to Dalit structure everywhere in every culture, don't we?
Yep.
And it just what defines the Brahmin society from the Dalit society. Okay, so carrying on. If we look, we're going to see closer to home a culture that focuses on having more than being, on having and doing. Remember those three states? There's having, doing, and being. Okay? And so the focus, the light is really focused on having, on possessions. You can sum that up in one word, capitalized, bolded, more. I have more than you do. I have more, fill in the blank. Money, possessions, land, car, territories, power. I have more of something than you do. Therefore, I am more important. I am more powerful. I am superior to you in some way. And we can take that into almost every aspect of culture and society. I have more of something than you do, and therefore that makes me superior. Rather than I have this that I've worked hard to gain, and I'm happy to share some of it, okay, to serve culture and society in some way, to express my gratitude for what I have received, okay, not just paying my taxes, but and not cheating on them, but also finding a way to serve back to those who don't have more, they have less. Okay, and healthy cultures and healthy tribes and healthy societies find a way of managing the more and the less situations. We can go back over 2,000 years, and one of the things that the great teacher Jesus said was, the poor will always be among you. And why did he say that? Because he knew. He knew the hungry, the poor, the ill, the tired, the disenfranchised in some way or another will always be here. I think he was a consciousness teacher who understood human nature, just like Buddha did. Understood human nature. Okay, carrying on. In the culture and society, we can also have something. All we have to do is look at an example. Would be China, when they said, you can only have one child, and all of a sudden, 10 years, 15 years later, they noticed that there were millions of girls missing. The balance of male to female in births is very stable. I don't know how the universe figures that one out, but it somehow does. Okay. And isn't that a bit of a mystery when you think about it? Like, who's keeping count of how many male and females are being born? Who's keeping count of that? I mean, isn't this interesting?
Yeah.
And how do they keep it at that almost perfect balance? I mean, that's something for some area of science to look into if they can, and figure out who's keeping count of all of that and making sure it stays in balance. So when we realized that millions of girls were missing, it was because of the belief system that male child was more important, more valuable. This came from a cultural belief system. So we can see how powerful these beliefs around importance in certain areas of more, whatever the more is, can influence entire nations. Okay, religion, self-importance. Does it come from religion?
Parts of it, I would imagine.
You bet. Okay, some religions and spiritual traditions teach unity and respect. Some do. And some branches of some religions have more tight branches and more encompassing and embracing branches. Others teach superiority and self-importance. What we believe is the truth. I have a great little story to tell you about that. I ordered this book. It's many years ago now, gosh. And I love a student of Joseph Campbell, and I love mythology and archetypal imagery. And so I've got all of Jung's books on my bookcase. And these things, the symbols and the meanings and the archetypes, is just so inspiring to, read about and understand and see them in everyday life. Okay. And I picked out or ordered this, and it's a great big thick giant book on my bookcase back there, and it's thick and it's heavy and it's mythology, world mythology. Okay, and it has everything in there, so you could look up, Krishna, Buddha, you could look up this and that and so on and so forth. After a while, I thought, something missing. I go through. In this book of mythology that had every other spiritual tradition and all their deities and everything, there was absolutely nothing about the Judeo-Christian believing, about the Virgin Mary, and about none of that was mythology, because that's the truth, right? You just can't go into a book about mythology because it's in a book that is the truth. How fascinating is that? Okay, so the powerful thing is we own the truth. We have the truth. What we believe is the truth. And therefore, our beliefs are more important than your beliefs. Our beliefs are superior to your beliefs. Another aspect that can happen in religion is God loves us best. Oh, okay. So where do you go with that one? It's like, okay, it's a belief system. That's all. It doesn't mean it's real. It doesn't mean it's true any more than the people who believed that the world was flat and that the sun moved around the earth. That didn't make it true because people believed it. There's people who believe that the moon landings were staged in a Hollywood backlot. Okay. You can believe what you want to believe. So far, I think that's still under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Only we are saved or chosen. Only we, based on our religion and our beliefs, only we will get to some state of being or some heavenly place or some grace of God, or because of what we believe, whereas the rest of you are a lot of sinners. Okay. And you get to go to another place that isn't isn't very happy at all, where you get punished for not believing what we believe. Okay. Now, of course, I live in Quebec since I'm 3 years old, other than massive amounts of years of traveling and studying here and there. And, you know, I got to watch the revolution of it being a Catholic state and it shedding the Catholicism. So in the 40 years of private practice, I worked with a lot of people I can only call recovering Catholics. And it's like there was a certain degree of deprogramming that they needed to go through. What had been built in through ancestral, you know, teachings around certain beliefs that they felt they didn't want to believe anymore, that it wasn't in alignment with what they felt was right for their life. Mm-hmm. Does this make sense? Did you want to say anything about all of this so far?
Yeah, I got it. It almost seems like God loves, I think you could almost say that the definition of genocide is God loves us more. That'd be like my first point. Like that seems to lead to that. And
well, that's the very far end extreme.
Right, right.
Okay. There are quite a few steps in between there. Okay. You know, one drink doesn't make you an alcoholic. I mean, it could. Okay. But it doesn't necessarily. So.
And then the second point I find interesting, I'd love to get your thoughts on, is I could see how giving up part of something may seem like giving up everything. To a lot of people who hold dearly to a certain belief, if they give up something, they feel like they're giving up all of it. So when you deprogram somebody from a different religion, it could be very difficult for them to just have some doubt in this one thing, because that may question their faith in everything.
Yes, and that's where, you know, I mean, I'm not a deprogrammer. Nobody should think I'm saying that. I'm not an exorcist. I'm not a deprogrammer. Okay, don't look me up for any of that. That people would come and it would be part of their personal search, their personal journey was, and I always put it is, work with these things in a way, hold them lightly. Hold them lightly. Maybe I believe this. Maybe I believe that. How does it feel? What happens to me if I don't believe that anymore? And more importantly, where did that belief come from? Does it come from deep inside of me? Because this is where I believe that beliefs should come from. They should be coming from something that feels completely right, deeply inside of us, and preferably based on individual experience. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so if beliefs come from, you know, we can say, well, I believe that exercise is really good for us. It's because somebody's usually exercising and finds that they feel better and their breath is better and their body feels more relaxed and more open and more flexible, and their health improves and things like that. And so our beliefs can be come more firm, and by us experiencing them and practicing them. Because if we have certain beliefs that have no vitality in our life, no meaning and vitality in our life, then we really do need to sit down and have a conversation with that belief. You know, am I really? Me and my people who I believe, and we believe this, are we really? You know, that old joke about, you know, someone dies and they go to heaven and they're, pick your religion, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, doesn't matter, okay? And they're being led by a guardian angel down a long hall. There's many doors, and that the Jewish people are in this, and then the so-and-so are that, and then there's a very long hall, one door way down at the bottom. And the person says, well, what's that down there? What's that door? And then he said, oh, that's the Catholics. They think they're the only ones in heaven. You know, it's a very old joke. I had a client tell me that, a Catholic client tell me that a long time ago. And that speaks to that belief, you know, about that our belief is the truth. And that can go really, really deep, and that can inflate a sense of importance and superiority. Our religion, our beliefs are something is more important than those other beliefs. We have a superiority in our beliefs. So there's there's cultural, there's the society influences, there's the religious, there's educational. That's part of our culture and our society. Educational influences, and then there's family. Family history or ancestry. What did we learn about our sense of self and our value as an individual from our family? Did we learn that we are special and privileged and entitled because great, how many greats back is we arrived on the Mayflower? Isn't that a whole thing in your country?
Right.
Okay, we don't have quite the same thing over up in Canada or in Britain, So we can trace ourselves back to this, and that makes us therefore more important and superior to, okay? And whatever that thing is that has this great importance, or your great grandfather founded this town. Okay, thank you. And okay, does that really make me more important than anybody else? Does it?
I think that I think on some line, it's easy to blur the ideas of self-importance and value, because a lot of people, I think there's a value question in there somewhere. People value these things. What is the demarcation line there?
Good question. Okay. So we're going to come to otherness in a moment, because there's a few things that are going to tie it together. Okay. So the difference between self-importance and self-worth.
Yes.
Okay. Self-worth is a deep-seated belief in one's natural intrinsic value, regardless of external forces like who your parents or your grandparents were, which school you went to, or which language you speak, the color of your skin, blah, blah, all of the various and sundry things that can be our identities. Okay, so we also need to talk a little bit about identities, and that's a whole other big conversation, So it's a healthy self-worth is a healthy, grounded perspective on who am I? My perception of myself and my perception of myself in the world. Healthy self-worth, grounded. It has self-respect and self-responsibility, and it respects others. So it's an embracing myself as having an intrinsic human value, as being in the experience of being human. That I have my skills, my limitations or shortcomings. Now, if we take that and we see what can that cultivate, it can cultivate awareness, self-awareness, one of the basics, right? Self-awareness, self-respect, self-responsibility, self-love, those foundations, okay? So it can promote awareness, it can promote compassion, awareness leads us to the web of life, the interconnectedness of all things, the interdependency of all things. Self-importance separates us. It's I'm up here with my fill in the blank, whatever I have that you don't have. So I'm up here with my thing. That separates me from everything. Whereas I'm here and I respect myself and I respect you. I'm responsible for myself. You're responsible for yourself. I recognize with as much compassion as I can muster up in any particular day, because that's a continuum. Okay. Compassion, right? Is that a deeper conversation? Compassion isn't like the light switch. We can't turn it on and off. It's more like taking care of a plant. Okay, we have to make sure it has the right light, the right amount of water. So compassion is an aspect of the soul that we have to nurture. we can't just kind of pull it out of our pocket when we need it. Just, yeah. Am I doing a decent job of trying to explain this? So it's something that we have to have nurtured inside of ourselves. It's not like a skill that we're born with. We can have empathy, which is different from compassion. These are deep conversations about deep aspects of being human, right? Okay, so we're back to self-worth. So we see that we have this self-importance, which separates us, and we have self-worth, which can unite us. Now, probably all of us are some combination of some self-importance and some self-worth. Yes, there are some people we can see that are pathological narcissists, okay? And clearly self-importance is a main focus. It's a driving factor, okay? And we can see some people where, you know, they're the Gandhis and the Martin Luther Kings and the people that we can say, yeah, they got it. They got it, you know? People in our everyday life that we can look at and we can see that they deeply get with some form of, and here's the key word, humbleness. How often do you hear that? That's like the antidote to self-importance, is humbleness. How often do you hear that word in modern conversation? Let's be humble here.
Yeah. Nature's good for that.
Pardon?
Nature's good for that. The ocean, as someone who spends a lot of time in the ocean, like it's really easy to be out there. And a while back, my daughter and I were swimming and we got caught in this riptide. It was clear as day. We're in Hawaii, clear as day. And all of a sudden this riptide developed. We were, you know, washed out to way past these rocks. And I remember my daughter clinging to me like, Dad, I'm like, okay, calm down, relax. We got to swim sideways over here. But a really humbling moment. And nature seems to do that to us if we sit and watch.
Yes. The ocean can do that. The wind can do that.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
where we are, the snow can do that.
Yes.
2 weeks ago, we had 74 centimeters of snow in like 2 days. Okay, I was sending pictures of it down to. We have a team coming back tomorrow from the Fatiwa in Brazil, and so I was sending down to the people in Brazil who never see snow. They never have a clue. You know, they're just saying, "What is that?" On that frozen white stuff up to here. So nature can give us an experience of humbleness, the power and the awesomeness.
Yeah.
But just the current of life can do that.
Yeah.
When we take a long, slow, deep breath and we step back and we look at our self-importance and say, okay, I think it's time I kind of did some transformation on that self-importance, you know. Now, we're going to come back to family and school because we didn't quite finish up on that in the self-importance department. So we can look at what happens in family dynamics that we can have this. So one of the things is your ancestors did this and your whatever and blah, blah, blah. And we have this and, you know, the old school tie. So you can get it from the school where, you know, you can have very difficult school situations that actually I've heard very difficult school situations from what are supposed to be the most prestigious schools, and they were just shoving it all under the rug because it's raw the old school tie, you know.
Yeah.
And so humbleness would be helpful in those circumstances. What can happen in a family is favoring one child over another due to valuing certain characteristics. We spoke a few minutes ago about that period of time in China where you could only have one child and how the male child is considered of greater value than a female child. And so they put out of balance their population for a couple of generations, you know. It'll take them a couple of generations to correct that. Right. So favoring one child over another, what other characteristics can you see that might cause a family to place more importance on one child over another?
I think long-term relationships. I know that
Oh, you're going too deep. Looks.
Okay.
Superficial thing.
Yes.
Okay, looks. How somebody looks. Oh, she's so beautiful. Oh, he's so handsome. Okay, so looks. We are such a superficial culture, aren't we? I mean, really, Western civilization, we are very superficial. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm all in favor and healthy and good and everything else. And, I like nice clothes and jewelry too, no problem with any of that, but that can't be who we are. So looks, academic achievements, athletic achievements.
Yeah.
So there's many different things that can cause a family to over-focus on one child, leaving the other children or child feeling less important somehow, of less value. Another thing we have done and probably still do a lot in our, we're drifting into otherness now, is that as families, societies, and cultures, we don't have a great track record with managing family members who are different. Diversity of, neurodiversity, which is a term that's only arrived in our conversation more recently.
Yeah.
But children who had, and again, if you look back much further, you're going to find that in older, very much older cultures, that diversity was respected. In the histories of many tribal peoples and indigenous people, diversity was respected. For example, when I was growing up, I was the only person in my family who was having these profound spiritual experiences. Nobody talked about anything. There wasn't a book, there wasn't a story, there wasn't anything, nothing about spiritual experiences. At that time, it was the 50s, 1950s. It was all about television and, stuff and your dress and your hair, and it was all about this superficial stuff. And here was me looking for desperately some level of conversation about spiritual things. Just didn't exist. I mean, fortunately, I had many good aspects in my family. My mother used to say that she didn't give birth to me, I arrived by spaceship. So I got tolerated, teased, if I tried to open a conversation. And as I got older, as I was able to, the big opening in the late 60s and 70s, East meets West, and all of a sudden this became part of the conversation. You could meditate, you could have these experiences. All of a sudden it became socially acceptable, So being different, just being different from your immediate surrounds, that can not be well tolerated. So diversity, which is an essential part of the human experience. Can you imagine if we were all the same? We all love pink and we all love Chinese food and we only like one movie, fill in the blank. Can you imagine? We'd be cartoon characters. So how do we embrace diversity? And we're back to awareness, humbleness, recognizing the web of life, right? Okay, so have we anything else about that? Everybody had, I know very few people who didn't have some difficult school experiences where they were either too tall or too short, or maybe they developed and matured more quickly than the other kids in their class. And or maybe they wore glasses, or maybe they had a surgery, or maybe they had an accent because their family came from somewhere else. In certain areas and in certain eras, that level of difference, either everybody would flock to be your friend, or they would just you out. You'd be alone in the playground because nobody wanted to talk to you because you were too short, too tall, wore glasses, had a funny accent, whatever. Okay, and so how do we navigate with all of this, and how do we make sure that what we're doing as individuals is bringing the best possible vibration of respect for ourselves and for others? What do you think? You've got such a serious look on your face. I know it's serious things. Oh, did I flash you back to the schoolyard? Sorry. Are you standing in the schoolyard?
A little bit. Like, it takes me back and thinking about my relationships with different people and knowing some other kids that were different, that were kind of singled out, or they got beat up, or some of my experiences where people would like pants me, or, you know, they make fun of you. And, you know, it's how, and I guess those patterns carry on forever. If you always, you know, neglect the weirdo, which that's probably a lot of us, you know, then that's how you deal with weirdos later in life. And that's the wrong word, but I mean, I'm speaking from that perspective as a kid. Like, that person's different. We're not going to be around them.
Yeah, in grade 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
Right.
whatever you call it
Right.
down there, you know, the upper grade schools and early high schools, kids are cruel.
Yeah, totally.
Let's not try and dress this up. And that brings us to, you know, a comment that the human species, we're not a very nice species.
Yeah,
we're
it's
not
true.
a very nice species. You and I have discussed this before. We are essentially an aggressive, selfish species. And now we're going to come to otherness, because this is a really important part of it. Okay, we're talking about diversity, and now let's talk about otherness. So, what is othering or otherness? It's conscious and unconscious bias. Okay, so they travel hand in hand. They can. Self-importance, sense of who I am, and othering, otherness. Okay, if we already feel we're superior because of our fill in the blank, whatever it is that we have that we think is more important than what other people have, okay, then othering and otherness is going to come more easily to us than if we don't have that, or if we have a smaller amount of it. If through our educational process and our family development, if we've been exposed to things that are more diverse and more tolerant. I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, the one thing that I really have to chapeau to my mother to is we ended up one of the only, I think, 3 families on the entire street that wasn't Jewish. Nobody could have predicted this, that this area in Montreal, Côte Saint-Luc, would turn out to be like, you know, there's an Italian district, a Greek district, you can go on, and a wonderful Chinatown. It just happened where they were taking farmland and building houses, that my father said, hey, this looks like a great area, and had a house built. And so what my mother did is she asked neighbors, can I visit a synagogue with my children so that they have an understanding of what it's like, what it is that you believe and what it is that you practice? And you're welcome to come with us to the Anglican Church. Okay. And then she asked another neighbor who was Catholic, could I bring my children to your Catholic church so that they could experience, you know, your beliefs in your setting? You know, I have such a funny memory of being in that church. I mean, we were pretty young, okay? My mother was horrified. Here we are coming from the British, you know, very well behaved in church with the little white gloves and our hat. You never went to church with a hat on, you know, and we would barely move, my sister and I, because that's how we were kind of brought up and how we were trained to behave in church with deep respect and solemnness. And here were these other 2 children who had been given rosaries, and they were banging them on the pews and carrying on. And we were just like horrified that you could actually do this in church, you know? That's my one memory of being in that experience. But, you know, good for my mom that, you know, here she is in the 50s trying to expose us to other belief systems so that we would have a deeper understanding about what people believed and how they practiced it. And so if you've had some of that, it helps you, rather than just, no, we're not them. No, we don't believe that. No, we don't. You know, that's them. And they're over there somehow. Do you know what I mean? They're over there. There's this distance, this sense of separation, distance that gets created. So othering or otherness is being or feeling different in appearance, character, cultural, social, religious aspects from what is familiar, expected, or generally accepted. Is that a decent definition?
I think so.
Right? So we can either feel that we're different, that we're other, okay, or we can feel that that person or those people are other. And by kind of, it's this process of almost depersonalizing that then can give us some, in our self-importance and superiority, that can give us some kind of a rationalization for actually treating someone or some people differently. You can look at the history of the human race and you see that happens over and over again. We have this superiority, you're other, therefore we can treat you differently. It's okay to bully you in the schoolyard because you're different. It's okay to not allow you to join the club or the church or the thing or the whatever. It's okay to not give you that job. It's okay to not accept you in that university because we're this and you're that.
What about what happens? What
Yeah.
about what happens when sometimes otherness can lead? Like it, I think that there's. Let me try to think of an example. Like, let's say you bring in someone to a group and say they're okay, but then that person who you brought in as an other abuses someone there. Doesn't that reinforce the idea of otherness and like, hey, this is why we don't bring these people in? All it takes is for like one example of something like that.
Well, for sure that can happen, but then we'd have to look at that in our special little group where we're more important and nothing bad ever happens. Okay, well, what a whopping great lie that would be. Okay.
Right, it's true.
I mean, that's a huge whopping. Right. That would be a perfect example of, you know, I mean, I'm sure it may have happened, okay, but that would be an example of why did that person select that person to bring in? They must have known that there was going to be a problem. So was there an unconscious bias that they actually set up the situation to make sure it didn't work? I mean, you know, whatever. Okay. So othering can be the process through which a dominant group creates and stigmatizes out groups. So you have the in group and the out group. You know, in high school it was the clique and the in kids and the out kids. So we can see this goes way back in our developmental process. We quickly learn that there's those that are in and those that are out in our society. Okay. Now, unless we have a family that makes that effort to be more inclusive, that has those conversations about trying to understand people who wear different clothes or have different capabilities or follow different traditions, speak different languages, you know, have a different ethnicity. If we live in an environment that fosters that, let's call it an educational process, because it basically is. We can teach our children to hate, or we can teach our children to be respectful and inclusive. That doesn't mean being respectful and inclusive does not mean not having genuine and sincere awareness around trust. We can't just trust everybody. Sorry, we can't. Wouldn't it be nice if we could?
Yeah.
So it's always a power dynamic. There's always power issues at play here. There's a one up and one down. There's a one in and one out. Okay, do you see that? Yes. Okay, so it's always power is always at play. So where there's self-importance, an inflated sense of me, my group, my beliefs, my whatever it is, okay, this is far more important. And therefore, power is given to that. Power is taken for that. And then we start to see the misuse of power. We can see it in religions. We can see it in cultures. We can see it in politics. We can see it everywhere. So, what is this about? This self-importance and othering, in which we have a reluctance to interact with people outside our own in-group. We feel threatened by people from outside one's in-group. We attribute negative qualities to individuals from a different group, which may or may not be at all realistic. You know, we can look at warring clans and warring tribes, the Hatfields and the McCoys, okay? Choose any group you want. Okay, what was that? The Hatfields and McCoys, I forget, was that Kentucky, Missouri? I don't remember. That's an American story, isn't it? Yeah. Hatfields and McCoys for like
Absolutely.
4 decades. They had this tribal war going on. Okay, so this is a perfect example, that kind of thing. Okay, where you hate the other people, because you've been taught to hate them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard to unlearn hatred. It's hard to unlearn. You have to want to unlearn. When you've been taught to hate something, when you've been taught to be frightened of something, when you've been taught, or not something, but people, you know, the different people, you have to want to unlearn that.
It seems like, you know, we can look at a real life example of like Israel and Palestine right now. It's such a deep seated level of education. And I don't know, I'm not from there. I don't know, but from the outside.
And on one level, let's put this right out here for anybody listening. I don't think either of us have a sufficiently educated idea of all of the complicated circumstances that go back thousands of years. That, you know, that one has to be really very mindful of creating opinions either side of this, okay? Because, you know, I'm going to own it. This is me being humble. Is I definitely, although I can look at the situation, and I've read the Bible enough times, so I think I understand quite a bit of the history, okay? But it's like, no, I don't live there. I am not of those faiths. I am not of those traditions or cultures. I haven't lived through it, so I can have deep compassion for both sides, you know? And I have a deep hope that wise people will prevail in supporting some fair and just resolution to this situation. But maybe my hope is unrealistic. There's, 34 armed conflicts, or has that gone up recently? I don't know. Probably. Approximately 34 armed conflicts going on. Some of them we don't even pay attention to because we don't have sufficient people of that population in our culture. So here's where we are back to my tribe, my people. So if, for example, Canada has, I think, the largest percentage of Ukrainian people outside of Ukraine. We took in a lot of people through the years, and it just so happened. Okay, so we have the largest percentage of the diaspora. At least this is what our Prime Minister has said recently. And so the people here who are from there are educating us on the situation, or have family members who are fighting in that war. And so the local people get involved, the non-Ukrainian Canadian people can feel like, okay, we know these people, they're our neighbors, and their kids go to school with our kids, and you know, we meet them in the clinics and the dentist's waiting room, and we know these people, so we can relate to them. They aren't the other. And then we can look at some of the places like, is it the Sudan, which is terrible civil wars and conflict and everything. But if we don't have any Sudanese people living in Canada, we don't have that personal connection to relate more deeply. Does this make sense? I'm not saying that this is admirable on my or the Canadian populations, but it's just that the more we know people, that we live with them, that we go to the grocery store with them, that their kids babysit our kids and go to school, we carpool with them, the more they're not other anymore and they become us.
But doesn't that, like, that sounds like a transference of unconscious bias, though? Like if you spend time with the Ukrainian people, right? So it's absorbing other unconscious bias.
Yes.
Which is still otherness.
Yes, and okay, it's our awareness of that's what we're doing. And we can either build awareness and humbleness and awareness of interdependency without becoming politically involved, you know, without becoming strident about issues that we don't know anything about. I think that is one of the most difficult things that I see. I can only speak for myself. I don't think I'm alone in this thought, but the loudest voices seem to be coming from the people who know absolutely nothing or very little about the situations. And I don't quite understand that, because if I want an opinion or on an issue, I like to think that I'm listening to people who are close to the situation, educated on the situation. You know, why do people who've never visited the Ukraine have even opinions on it? Is a kind of hard thing. I mean, opinions that they think that they know what's going on there, you know, or, you know, so this is more self-importance.
Yep.
Instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to pray and send a lot of light to that situation because I realize, or someone feels, you know, that they want to do some fundraising in their book club or their, you know, whatever it is, some group that they belong to, or their spiritual center. They want to raise some money and send some support, some medical support. When the war in Ukraine first happened, we happened to have at the time a person in our church from Ukraine whose brother was putting on his army fatigues and going to be fighting. Okay. And so what our church did is we fundraised and we sent per pack, there was these additional medical supplies, okay, packages of medical supplies. And we sent, I don't remember how many, but we sent a whole half a cargo load full of those over, you know, thinking, okay, we can do that. We're not going to send bullets, you know, not that we can buy them in Canada, thank goodness.
That's our job in the US.
Yeah, that's your job. We send medical supplies and peacekeepers. That's the Canadian take on things, you know, and we get criticized for that. You know, why aren't we sending more bullets? But it's not our culture. We don't carry guns in our culture. You know, who knows? Who knows? Everything changes after a while. Okay, we're back to, so let's look at otherness. Okay, I'm watching the clock tick away. There's 7 main categories that research has identified in which we will create or co-create othering. Race or ethnicity. Okay, somebody's a different race from us, a different ethnicity from us, then that can plant us right smack into othering. Okay, gender, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status. Oh, that's such a big one in our culture. Me, I have, you don't have. I'm not your friend then. I don't like you, you're not my friend. You know, you're a different something or other, therefore I won't hire you. I won't do carpool with you. I won't let my kids play with you. You can't come in my house. Don't play in my backyard. I'll let my dog always poop on your lawn. Okay. Yes, seriously. Seriously, I think I've heard it all. Okay. Age, getting older, noticing ageism.
Yep.
And physical or mental ability. So that's the main 7 categories in which we can puff up our self-importance and our sense of superiority, and then feel very justified in practicing othering and otherness. So when, you know, Dr. Monica Williams was, and still is writing about microaggressions and paying attention and trying to educate the public at large about when you're doing this, that's how people on the other side experience it, you know, and trying to awaken people to a sense of awareness. Okay, this is where, yes, self-importance and othering is what's really, I believe, at the root of all of that, and we all have it. Now, there's something so important to make a note on here, which is the biological aspect. It's almost part of the biological imperative, you know, the same as territory and breeding and, you know, food source and all of these things. Is there's a and we're hardwired for it. All of the research, if you look into the research, and then, you know, they've done a lot with animals because it's so obvious with animals. They, you know, the gorillas, they beat their chest and they drive off anybody that isn't from their tribe. Or if one lone, you know, chimpanzee or something is trying to join a group, they'll keep it very far away. They'll watch it. They'll run it off a few times. Wolves will do this. You know, even birds will do this. It's like, no, you're not part of our flock. Okay. Yes, you're still a Siberian crane, but you're not part of our flock. And within the flock, you're not part of our family. So it goes family, flock, others. Okay. And so if this is in birds and creatures and animals, then are we foolish to think it's not in us? That there isn't some hard wiring in there, some part of our survival instinct? Because it is part of the survival instinct, not trusting others because we don't know what they're going to do once they come in the group. There's in the Santo Daime, there's no, I haven't been myself personally in this situation. I only visited this particular area and site, the site of Mr. O'Neill's birth, and where his, well, not his birth, but where he died and his main community was, and visited his crypt and some of the senior people there. But I never actually participated in any of the works there. Just our timing when we were traveling didn't work out. But I do know quite a few people who have, and they've told me the same thing. You know, you can be a uniformed member of the Santo Daime many years, okay? When you arrive in their community, if you wish to stay, they don't let you into the church in the works. There's benches and areas outside with a covering. You stay outside while they watch you. They want to see, who are you? What are you bringing into our sanctuary? What are you bringing into our sacred space? They see how you behave in the community. Do you help? Do you, one person described to me how it took many, many months. He went in very humble, said would it be possible to stay? He was able to offer some donations for his stay. He's willing to help work. So they sent him cutting the difficult brush down around the edges. Perfectly happy to do it. Did it without complaint. It reminded me of the story of Jack Cornfield when he first went to his Akacha, his teacher's ashram, and he had to go and sweep the leaves on the path every day. And he muttered along an American, what do I have to sweep all these leaves for? And after a few days, he realized, oh, okay, that's why I'm sweeping the leaves. I need to get over my self-importance.
Yeah.
Sweeping the leaves is beneath my dignity. Okay? It's not beneath your dignity. It's a very dignified task. It's beneath your self-importance.
Yep.
And so this is how they would deal with people coming in filled with self-importance, is make sure they have humble tasks and see how they respond to the humble task. And if they respond well and they do it with, graciousness and with dignity and with respect, then little by little, they're allowed into the community and they're allowed into the works. So this is, we're kind of hardwired for that, because how many times do we fling open the doors and let people in, and especially in our society today, we're these friends, No, we're not friends. I mean, I'm not talking about you and me. I'm talking about, perfect strangers. You don't even know if that person is that person. That could be just some fake thing that's trying to worm its way into your life to take advantage in some way. Now that we're great friends, even though you think I'm a 30-year-old accountant working at this firm who loves bicycling and her dog, okay, I'm actually, a scammer sitting in the basement somewhere I'm going to get scamming you. And so, we've, in our current Western civilization society, we've lost a lot of that sense balanced instinct about trust and mistrust. So we mistrust things that don't really need to be mistrusted. And we willfully trust things that we should know better. Okay? We can have people saying one thing and doing something else. Okay? And we don't pay attention to that. Whereas that's the one thing we should be paying attention to. We should be paying attention to people's track record with people and responsibilities and duties that they've been given. And if we see that we invite them in and we give them the task of sweeping the leaves and they don't sweep the leaves and they bully somebody else to do it for them and they go and smoke a cigarette out the other side of the compound. Okay, do we really want that person in our group? So is there a place, is what I'm trying to say. Is there a place that does not have to be about superiority and self-importance? Is there a place where actually othering is actually part of an instinct, a survival thing that we just need to come at from a different place? And instead of a superiority in-group, inferior out-group way of looking at it, can we look at, yes, we're all human, yes, I can respect you, but I've always said to people, I start with this much respect and this much trust, and it's on you to build it. I can respect you more, I can trust you more based on your behavior, not your words, but how you actually live your life. And that trust and respect that I start with can be diminished if I see how you live your life is not in alignment and harmony with actually what you say. What do you make of all of this? These are just my thoughts.
I love it. It's, you know, it seems to me that so much of this unconscious bias are shortcuts or heuristics that we have because of not doing like the work for it. You know, and no one teaches you the difference between testing someone for trustworthiness and othering them. Like that, at least I wasn't taught that difference growing up. But in my life, I can see it. I know when my cousin Betsy started dating the man to whom she's married now, Justin is a brilliant man, and I love them both. But in the beginning, I was really mean to him because I was like, "What are you doing with my cousin? Who are you? Why do you deserve to be around?" And like it scared him, you know. And I was trying to scare him away. But he never backed down. He's like, I think she's amazing. I'm like, why? You know, but I would really challenge him in a way because I love my cousin. And I would do that for all my little cousins or my sister. But like we don't really learn that. Sometimes that's an innate thing, but people aren't taught the difference between testing for trustworthiness and othering. Like, and there's a beautiful difference there.
Yes, there is. And that's what we need to be educated on and to learn. Yeah. It's not automatically trust everyone. Yes. No, it's start off respecting everyone and offering someone modest trust. You know, a modest trust. And then that can be built on. So trust and respect can be built on. We can address our unconscious and conscious biases. Sometimes they're very conscious. Yep. We were taught to hate that, whatever that is. We were taught, you know, and we need to look at the roots of that. Okay, my religion, my culture, my background, my what have you, my family ideologists taught me to distrust and to hate that. Okay, is it real? And do I self-examine, like, why do I hate people I never met? That doesn't make sense to me. Why do I automatically hate and not trust and try and malign a whole group of people just because they look different, dress differently, speak differently, have a different way of praying or of living their personal life, you know? And so that's where self-awareness comes in. Why am I believing these things? So it all goes back to self-awareness. So self-importance and self-worth. Self-worth, again, is a deep-seated sense and belief in one's personal intrinsic value, regardless of external factors. In other words, regardless of what we have or don't have. So it's a healthy, grounded perspective on one's perception of self that includes one's strengths and one's shortcomings and limitations. Does that make sense? How can we transform self-importance and othering to healthy self-worth and compassion and humbleness? So first is, as I've said, recognize our own strengths and limitations. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. And sometimes we're making the same mistake over and over again. Embrace self-respect and self-responsibility. And no confusing, and don't try to kid me that self-respect is the same as self-importance. Not buying it. Don't try to run it by me because there's no sale. They're completely different. cultivate awareness, humbleness, and the interconnectedness of the web of life. When we really recognize that I need you and you need me, I need all the people who do everything. I need the people who drive the buses and who drive the snow removal trucks and who work in the accounting departments and I need the big banks and I need the government and the provincial and the municipal and the federal, all levels of it. And yes, I would like more governmental efficiency. I think we'd all like that. But no, I'm very sorry to say the example that currently your wonderful country is practicing. Okay, slash and burn. Okay, okay. So I just want to say that the idea of government efficiency is really good. It's how to implement it. That maybe there can be different ideas on that. That maybe other options should be discussed and considered with a certain level of intelligent, educated oversight. Having said that, I do sound like I'm in a classroom, but that's okay. Now, so we can transform otherness to unity, unity that embraces individuality. Otherness can become unity that embraces individuality. There's always going to be people that we like better than others. I'm sorry. And we like them because, hey, I love golf and you love golf, or, you know, I believe this and you believe that, and you like this music and I like that music. And, you know, there's always reason, there's a kind of a vibrational fit with some people that we just don't have with other people. Even if we kind of want to like them, or we kind of sort of do like them, but we don't kind of really want to spend much time with them because their vibration is completely off to what we're vibrating with. Does that make sense? Yes?
Yeah.
It's like I'm playing Mozart and you're playing, name some acid rock band that I never listened to.
Led Zeppelin.
What?
Led Zeppelin? Led Zeppelin was pretty awesome.
Oh no, I like Led Zeppelin. Okay, that's a classic. Okay, no, that's a classic. No, you have to. I'm talking about those screaming, banging, burn their guitar, and throw it on, you know, rip around, step. I know those people. It's just noise. Okay, so the vibration's different. Okay, and so that's part of respect as well. We can respect each other's difference, but we don't have to like everybody, and we don't have to like someone to respect them. We don't have to like someone to treat them the same way we would like to be treated. And here we come down to the last couple of comments on it, which is a perennial philosophy. What every great spiritual teacher has tried to teach us: do as you would be done by. That's the bottom line on all of it. Is this how you would like to be treated? Is this how you would like to be spoken to? Is this the opportunity you would like to be given? Do as you would be done by. That is a key piece in helping us to transform self-importance and otherness. Yes?
I think, yeah, it's a beautiful lesson. It's a very beautiful lesson, and I'm happy to hear it. And I know that there's definitely parts of my life I can apply it to, and I think all of us can apply different parts of it to it and be more aware of what we don't know.
Yes, of what we don't know. And you know, I'm going to go back to 1971, more or less, where I had these two LSD experiences that in the end kind of merged into one. It's like very quickly, even though they were 2 weeks apart or 3 weeks apart, they quickly, within a very short period of time, it was like one experience. And part of that experience was, it was a question of this kind of unity of cosmic consciousness that I experienced. And I do write about this experience in my books and other spiritual experiences that I've had for those of you who are interested. And in this experience of unique oneness with everything, I opened my eyes and I looked at my body and I was looking at my hands, and it's as if I could see into the entire structure and biology of my hand, my skin and the muscles and the blood circulating and my heart beating, like the level of awareness of that is beyond understanding, actually, you know. And so I'm looking at this fascinating experience of having this body. And then I realized that I have this, you know, just, we're so unconscious of so much. And then I realized that, yes, I do have this skin color. And this moment of cosmic consciousness at the same time as micro consciousness, okay, the cells of my body and the entire universe. And it's like all of it is singing and humming and vibrating, okay? And I realized, like, there's absolutely no difference between me and people of any other ethnicity, of any other tribe or clan, or it's like we're all connected, okay? And from that moment, any sense of otherness that I had from being a British, you know, born in 1949, came to Canada, you know, and Quebec was very kind of homogenous. I mean, it was kind of, you know, it was what it was, you know. It's certainly Montreal is infinitely more multicultural still to this day. But from that moment, I couldn't go back from that moment. It's not possible once you've had that level of deep understanding that there is no difference. Doesn't matter the language, the religions, the color of the skin, absolutely no difference on that level. And then on every other level, yes, of course there's differences. If I go to Japan, I can't speak Japanese. Okay. If I go to Peru, there's many cultural things I won't be able to, even all the years that I traveled to Brazil, I'm deeply aware of the cultural differences. And so, but they aren't differences that cause otherness. They're differences that awake interest and curiosity and discovery. Yeah. And for me, that's the interesting piece. It is, how do we turn that part? Because there is that part. Instead of looking at others with fear, how do we look at that with curiosity and interest and discovery?
Yeah, it seems like otherness is a mirror.
Yeah, say more. Say more.
Well, you know, I think I've found that as I've gotten older, the things that I see in other people are a mirror to me. Like, especially the things that bother you about other people. Like, you should pay attention to that. Like, if something really bothers you about somebody else, that's because that thing that bothers you is really in you. And that
okay,
person
that's
is doing
classic.
A
That's classic Assagioli teachings. It's called the disowned self. Okay, Assagioli, the Italian psychiatrist whose work I trained in, Roberto Assagioli, brilliant. Okay, and he took these concepts and put them into such a simplicity that we can all understand them. It's called the disowned self. I disown it in me, so I have to dislike it and disown it in you.
Yeah.
You know, you're greedy. You're jealous.
Yep.
You're just so self-important. Yes, the mirror. We get to look at ourselves and go,
yeah.
Yeah. And so this is what I said earlier about, this is kind of an evolutionary process.
Yeah.
It isn't, you know, as you said about compassion, we can't just flick a switch and turn on compassion. We can't flick a switch and turn on unity. These are things we have to be nurturing and caring for in our everyday life. And then it's there for us. You know, what I try to teach a lot of the, you know, the people who come in, well, my clients, my students, and then certainly this 30 years in the Santo Daime, one of the core things that I try to help them to do is, I teach them, and this is what my teachers taught me, whether it was learn the yoga, learn the breathing, learn the mantras, learn the chants, okay? Because then they're right there for you. You're sitting on the bus or the metro, or you're in a plane and there's turbulence, or wherever you are, that prayer, that breath is right there for you. And it's the same with attitudinal changes. You practice it on a daily basis. You practice it. I mean, what year is it where Black Lives Matter and that dreadful incident with George, I think I've forgotten his last name.
Floyd.
Yeah, George Floyd, thank you. Okay, and that movement became very powerful, okay? I asked a dear friend of mine, a person of color, and I said, listen, this is what I'm doing. I can't see that I'm doing more than this. Are these the things on a simple daily basis that I can be doing? They're so small, but it feels like something I can do. And she said to me, yeah, just keep doing that. Okay. So it was always making sure that if I came, I know this is going to sound ridiculous. If I came to a stop sign, normally I'm pretty good about person to my right goes first. Okay. But I will let almost anybody go first if they're a person of color. It's just like giving that extra thing. I will give way on the sidewalk with a smile. I will make sure I hold the door. I will make sure I look people in the eyes and smile, even if I'm just walking along the street and they're walking their dog or their child or pushing the stroller. And I see, because I'm an old white lady, which I hate. I'm not white.
I don't hate that. Don't hate that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, no, I hate that I'm assigned as being white. I don't feel white when I'm asked on forms, where it says other, I fill in Anglo-Saxon. Okay, me too. I have a race. Okay, I have an ethnicity.
Right.
Not just a skin color. That's what I don't like, is being boiled down to a skin color. So in all these tiny little ways, holding a door, letting someone go in front of me, even if they're younger than I am and more abled than I am at this point, looking people right in the eye. These are all strangers. Looking people right in the eye and smiling.
Yeah.
Okay. And some people, the expression on their face is surprise. It's just surprise. No, please go first. Oh, you only have 2 items. It's okay. You go ahead of me. It's all these tiny little daily things that are saying, I respect you. I see you as another human being, just like me, and I respect you. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Yeah?
Yeah. I do a good one. I want to share one with people that I do that really helps me, and it always brings a smile to the person I'm talking to. Like wherever you go, like if you go to the grocery store or you're getting something somewhere and you're having an interaction, like I was at the grocery store the other day, and I always say, hey, thanks for working today. You just look at them and say, hey, thank you for working today. And so many people just go, what?
Yeah. Every cashier. Every cashier I go to, I look them right in the eyes and I say, good morning or good afternoon. Thank you very much. How's your day? Yeah. I mean, I don't get in some long, complicated conversation. I don't want to know their family history or what their boyfriend did yesterday. I don't have space for that. But I'm acknowledging them that, hey, you're doing your job, and thanking them. Thank you. Go and have a nice day,
Yeah.
And this kind of respect and how I was raised, this was normal, that it was called courtesy. I was raised in an era where you showed courtesy to others, where you showed kindness to others. On that note, I'm going to tell you a wonderful little story that I think is fun. My former husband, it's been an interesting 3 years. First of all, my former husband, father of my children, passed away, and then a year later, my mother passed away, and then in January, my husband, partner and husband of the last 30 years, passed away. So it's been like 1, 2, 3, and I'd like a little pause now before the next. Okay. Anyway, my first father-in-law. Okay. He was a real gentleman. They were raised very much in the style that I had been raised, and they had this beautiful home in Ottawa. It was called Maple Lawn, and a beautiful home and grounds, and it was right by the river, the canal, and the lawns went pretty much down to where there's this walking path. And so it wasn't so much, they had hedges and everything around, but there wasn't some big steel fence up or anything, because it was right sitting in the middle of National Parkway. Okay, it was still kind of had been a private home for generations, and so they had, were pretty getting senior when I was there. And there's this wonderful story about it was going to be a wedding. It wasn't our wedding, but it was a wedding of one of the other brothers at the house that day. And early in the morning, Roy Rochester Sr., my former father-in-law, got up in the morning, and he realized that it had been foggy the evening before, and a little tent had sprung up, not quite in the back garden, but pretty much right in the back garden. So he took out a silver tray and a couple of glasses of orange juice and he stood beside the tent and said, "Good morning." And the tent flap opens, and here's Lloyd Rochester in his morning suit. Like, a morning suit, it's not a tuxedo, but it's a very fashionable British wear for weddings. He's in his morning suit with this silver tray with some glasses of orange juice on, and he says, "Good morning," offers them this, and they're like stunned. And he says, "I really didn't wish to disturb you, but you are in our back garden, and we have a wedding happening in about an hour and a half. So I will have to ask you to, tidy up and move along." Okay, that's courtesy.
Yes,
that's what courtesy looks like. Instead of going out and screaming at them or calling the police or something. Okay, it was foggy. They didn't realize. They set up their little tent. It was two young college kids. Probably that story went down on their children and grandchildren.
Sure.
That's what courtesy looks like. Courtesy looks like self-respect and respecting others. It looks like politeness. It looks like acknowledging people, acknowledging the work that they're doing, acknowledging the important place that they have in society. Everybody has their role in society, and every job has value, and every person has value, and it's up to each of us to recognize the worthiness of others. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons.
I better wrap it up. My day's disappearing. Always an enormous pleasure to hang out with you and talk about things that have deep meaning in our lives, share stories, and thank you so much for letting me hang out with you today.
I'm always blessed that you get to spend time with me. So thank you. I'm always blessed that you allow me to spend some time with you. So thank you for that, and to all the audience. So it's always a pleasure. And to everybody within the sound of my voice, go down to the show notes. Check out Dr. Jessica's new site that she has up. Do yourself a huge favor and check out both books. They're guidebooks, and you won't read them once. You'll store them, and you'll have tabs, and they'll be underlined, and they will serve as guides. And for me, they serve as moments of clarity. So thank you very much for it. And I hope everybody goes down to the show notes, checks out your site, reaches out to you if they're curious. I think you are available for speaking, and I love talking to you. So thank you very much, everybody within the sound of my voice. I love you guys too. Have a beautiful day. That's all we got. Aloha.